All right, so we're just gonna review real quick what we did last time. So I'm gonna go through number 1 really quickly, but because we've been doing this for about a week now, so it shouldn't be too bad. So when we take a look at the chemical equation for ammonium and sulfur's MCI, first we're gonna go to the polyatomic chart. So if we take a look at the polyatomic chart, you should see ammonium, which is NH4 plus. So that's what we're gonna write for our cation. So our cation is NH4 plus. Okay. Next, we got sulfur's MCI, and sulfur is an element, so we'll find that on the periodic table. So if we take a look at sulfur, sulfur is going to be on the right side, and sulfur is going to be -2. So we're going to write S2 minus. Okay, so those are our 2 ions. Any questions or issues on how you got that? Hopefully it's not too bad. All right, so we add them together in our chemical equation, and you should notice you need 2 of these. 2 of the ammoniums to balance out the sulfur. So we put a 2 in front of ammonium and then a 1 in front of the sulfur. All right, and so they're going to react together and you're going to form 1 ionic compound. So like I said, the easiest way to write the ionic compound is just write the 2 ions next to each other to start. Okay, just like that. And since you need 2 of the ammoniums, we're going to put parentheses around ammonium and put a 2. You only need 1 sulfur, so you just leave S by itself. Okay, and so that's what the chemical equation should look like. All right, any questions on number 1? Okay, let's do the naming now. So for the naming, we're going to refer back to the naming chart. And again, you guys can use that on your lab, which we'll do next class, and then on your exam, which is next Monday. And so you'll always have those naming rules available to you guys. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is look at the naming chart, which is right here. And we talked about how cations, so the positive ion keeps its name regardless of the charge. So the name of our cation was ammonium, so we're just going to write ammonium for the cation. So the name of this compound to start will be ammonium. And then for the anion, we have to figure out if it comes from the periodic table or from the polyatomic chart. So anions are from the periodic table, we change their ending, but polyatomics we keep the same. Well, sulfur's from the periodic table, so we change the ending to sulfide. So this compound is going to be ammonium sulfide. And there you go. That's pretty much what we covered last time. If you're able to get that, then you should be in good shape for the lab next week and then the exam in 2 weeks. Okay. Any questions? Easy peasy? Too early for this, right? I agree. Okay. All right, so today we're going to be going on to part 2 of the nomenclature. So pretty much everything will stay exactly the same. We're just adding one last rule onto the naming. And this is good news, the last thing that we're going to learn before your exam. So after this, you just need to retain the information from previous lectures and you should be good. Okay, so let's take a look at our polyatomic naming rules. Okay, we're going to be learning the rule that we ignored last time. So this rule right here, and I'm going to explain it real quick to you guys, and then we'll do a couple practice problems and we'll be all done, okay? All right, so for the new naming rule, it has to do with metals that can form more than 1 ion. Okay, so this second rule has to do with the middle section of the periodic table. So if you have a metal from this area, this section right here, okay, so groups 3 through 12, okay, then there's going to be an additional rule that you guys need to follow for the naming. So if you have something like iron or yttrium, right, anything from the middle, you're going to have to apply this new naming rule. Okay, and the new naming rule is that you have to put its charge in Roman numerals in parentheses after it. Okay, so I know that sounds a little complicated, but it's pretty simple. So let's take, for example, iron. Okay, iron is from the middle section of the periodic table, right? So since iron is in the middle, when you write its name, you're going to write the name of Fe, which is iron, but you also want to put the charge, whether it's +2, +3. You want to put that charge in parentheses behind the name, just like that. Okay, and that's it. That's the new rule. So if it's iron Fe2+, we write the name as iron 2. If it's Fe3 plus, we write the name as iron 3. If it's Fe4 plus, then we write the name as iron 4. And we do this in Roman numerals, so 4 is IV, and then so on and so forth. If it's iron 5, it'll be iron and then V. Okay, and that's it. That's all you really need to keep in mind for this new rule. So all you need to keep in mind is if it's from the middle of the periodic table, you just write the charge behind it in parentheses. Okay. And then if you're uncomfortable with Roman numerals, I guess I'll just write it up here for you guys. 1 is just I, 2 is 2 I's, 3 is 3 I's, 4 is IV, and then 5 is V. And I think that's the highest we'll go for this class. So again, other than that, it's pretty much the same. You just write the name and then put the charge, and then the anion stuff stays exactly the same. There's no new anion rule. Okay, so for the first one, we're going to be writing the chemical equation for these ions. So actually, let me give you guys about a minute or so to write the chemical equation using these two ions, and then I'll go over how to write the name. So go ahead and take about a minute or so to write the chemical equation between Au plus and chlorine's MCI. Take a minute to do that. All right, so for this one, should be pretty simple. You got Au positive 1, and you get chlorine's MCI, which you should have got Cl minus. And since these guys are already balanced, just put a 1 in front of both of them. Draw your arrow, and that's going to make 1 AuCl. Any questions on the equation? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these elements. They both come from the periodic table, and let's write the name. So let's start with Au. So Au is right over here, God bless you, in the middle, and the name for Au is gold. Okay, so we're just going to write gold for our cation. So Au is gold. And since Au comes from the middle of the periodic table, we have to write down the charge in parentheses. So Au here is +1, so it'll be gold 1. And then Cl is going to be chloride because it comes from the periodic table. Okay. So the name of this compound will be gold 1 chloride. So again, the only new thing that we're doing today is since Au is from the middle of the periodic table, we just need to add the little parentheses with the charge. All right, so take about 2-3 minutes. See if you guys can do the second one on your own. You got Ti4 plus and cyanide. And then after that, we'll go over it. And that's pretty much it for today. Okay, so for this one right here, we start with our cation, which is Ti4 plus. And cyanide, if you take a look at the polyatomic chart, is going to be Cn minus. Okay, so cyanide comes from the polyatomic chart right here. So we got cyanide, Cn minus. All right, so to balance out these two ions, you should be able to see that you're going to need 4 cyanides to balance out 1 of the titaniums. Okay, so we can write our ionic compound. So for this one, again, I always recommend just write the ions next to each other like this, and then put in the numbers afterwards, okay? Since we only need 1 titanium, you can just leave it alone. But since you need 4 cyanides, you need 4 of the whole thing. So you're going to put the whole thing in parentheses and put a 4 behind it. So this would be the correct formatting for the polyatomic. Okay, I know the parentheses can get a little bit tricky, and that's why I always recommend just write the 2 things next to each other and then add the parentheses and stuff later, just because it makes it a lot easier. So 1 Ti, so you write Ti once. You need 4 of these, so you put the whole thing in parentheses and put a 4. Okay. All right, and then for the name, we're going to go find Ti on the periodic table. Ti is in the middle. It's right over here in group 4. It's titanium. So we're going to write the name titanium. And since it comes from the middle of the periodic table, you have to put the charge in parentheses behind it. So it'll be titanium 4. And since cyanide comes from the polyatomic chart, we just write the name cyanide. And that's it.